In 1972, one of Hollywood's most brutal and unforgettable scenes was filmed for Jeremiah Johnson. Robert Redford was there. The cameras rolled. The crew watched in stunned silence. But the finished film that hit theaters was missing something crucial. For over 50 years, studio executives have never publicly explained what happened to that footage or why it vanished. Some say it was too graphic. Others claim it crossed a line that even 1970s Hollywood wouldn't allow. The truth is more complicated than anyone realized. And the deleted scene has become one of cinema's greatest mysteries. What makes this story even stranger is that the scene wasn't just cut for length. It was systematically removed from every version of the film, every print, every re-release, every restoration. The studio made sure almost nobody would ever see it. But fragments survived. Whispers about what happened on that mountain set spread through Hollywood for decades. Actors involved refused to discuss it. Directors went silent. And the man who directed Jeremiah Johnson took the real story to his grave. Until now, the full truth about why this scene terrified studio executives has remained hidden in Hollywood vaults. To understand why this scene mattered so much, you need to know who Robert Redford was in 1972. He wasn't just famous. He was becoming a legend. The year before, he starred in Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. Before that, Downhill Racer. Hollywood's golden boy was on an unstoppable rise. Studios wanted to protect him. They wanted to protect their investment. And they wanted to control his image. But Redford wasn't interested in playing it safe. He wanted challenging roles. He wanted to disappear into characters. He wanted authenticity. So when director Sydney Pollack approached him about playing Jeremiah Johnson, a real mountain man who lived in the 1820s wilderness, Redford said yes immediately. This wasn't going to be a typical action film. It was going to be a deep character study about isolation, survival, and a man transforming into something wild. The real Jeremiah Johnson was legendary in American frontier history. He lived alone in the Rocky Mountains for years. He hunted. He survived impossible conditions. He earned respect from Native American tribes through his skills and honor. The story of his life fascinated audiences because it represented something almost lost in modern America. Pure independence. Uncompromising survival. A man completely free from society's rules. Sydney Pollack understood this. He wanted the film to feel real, raw, authentic. So he demanded authenticity in every scene. Every moment had to feel true to the wilderness experience. Every emotion had to be genuine. And he pushed his actors, his crew, and his studios to uncomfortable places to achieve that vision. This dedication to realism is what led to the controversial scene that would haunt the film forever. Jeremiah Johnson was filmed in the mountains of Utah and Wyoming during brutal winter conditions. The crew faced real danger. Temperatures dropped below freezing. Snow buried equipment. Horses struggled. And Robert Redford, determined to fully inhabit the character, refused comfortable accommodations. He wanted to experience what Jeremiah Johnson experienced. Cold, hunger, isolation, fear. This commitment impressed Pollack. But it also worried studio executives watching from Los Angeles. They were investing millions into this film. They needed box office returns. They needed a bankable star who stayed healthy and focused. Instead, they had an actor deliberately subjecting himself to extreme conditions for the sake of artistic authenticity. The studio's concerns grew when they heard about the deleted scene. Pollack had written a moment of raw, unflinching violence into the script. Not gratuitous violence. Not action movie violence. But the kind of violence that exists in nature and survival. The kind that changes a person forever. The kind that transforms a civilized man into something else entirely. When filming began, Pollack approached this scene with documentary-level intensity. He wanted the audience to witness a turning point. Not just see it intellectually. Feel it. Understand why Jeremiah Johnson became the man he became. What broke him. What hardened him. What made him choose the wilderness over civilization forever? The scene involved a moment of brutal consequence. A moment that showed what happens when civilization's rules collide with wilderness survival. It wasn't meant to be entertaining. It was meant to be disturbing, real, true to the actual dangers and moral complexities that frontier men face daily. And when Pollock finished filming it, he believed he had created something powerful, something necessary, something that would elevate Jeremiah Johnson from a simple adventure film into genuine cinema. But he was wrong about one thing. The studio would never let audiences see it. When studio executives first saw the rough cut of Jeremiah Johnson, they watched in silence. The film was stunning. Redford's performance was magnetic. The cinematography captured wilderness beauty in ways audiences had never seen before. But then came the scene, the one Pollock had fought so hard to include authentically. What happened in that moment wasn't graphic in a modern sense. There was no blood spray, no slow-motion agony, but it was psychologically devastating. It showed a consequence so real, so permanent, that it fundamentally altered Jeremiah Johnson's character. It wasn't a moment of heroism. It wasn't an action sequence. It was a moment of irreversible loss. A moment that proved the wilderness demanded prices civilization never asked. Studio executives panicked. They called emergency meetings. They debated what to do. Some argued the scene was essential to understanding the character's transformation. Others insisted it was too dark for mainstream audiences, too real, too uncomfortable. Some worried it might alienate viewers. Others feared it could be misinterpreted as promoting wilderness violence or rejecting civilized values. But the real fear was simpler than that. The studio realized this scene could damage Robert Redford's image. He was America's golden boy. Audiences loved him as a hero. They wanted him charming, attractive, morally uncomplicated. This scene showed him as something else, something brutal, something capable of acts that civilization had taught him were wrong, something transformed by extreme circumstances into a person whose moral compass had rotated completely. The studio made a decision. The scene would be removed, not just cut, completely excised from every version. Every print would be altered. Every theatrical release would omit it. Every future restoration would pretend it never existed. The negative would be locked away, and anyone who asked about it would be told it was simply a creative decision during editing. Sydney Pollack was furious, but he couldn't fight the studio's power. For decades, the exact nature of the deleted scene remained mysterious. Film historians knew something had been removed. Critics could sense the narrative gap, but nobody could prove what the footage contained. The studio's silence was absolute. No scripts leaked. No crew members spoke publicly. No photographs surfaced. It was as if the scene had been erased from history itself. Then, in the 1990s, something unexpected happened. A film restoration expert working on a new Jeremiah Johnson print discovered anomalies in the original negative. There were splice marks, sections that had been physically cut from the film. The negative itself bore evidence of removal. This confirmed what insiders had always known. The scene was real. It had existed, and it had been deliberately destroyed. But destroying the negative wasn't enough. The studio also had to ensure that people who remember the scene would stay silent. Some sources suggest that actors and crew members signed strict non-disclosure agreements. Others were simply paid to forget. A few who tried to discuss what happened faced legal threats. The message was clear. This scene would remain buried. What made the situation even stranger was that by the 1980s and 1990s, filmmaking had changed. Cinema had become far more graphic, far more violent. Scenes that would have seemed shocking in 1972 were now routine. Movies showed things that made the Jeremiah Johnson scene look tame by comparison. Yet the studio never reconsidered releasing it, never restored it as part of director's cuts, never acknowledged its existence in documentaries or interviews. Some film theorists believe the studio's real fear wasn't the content itself. It was what the scene represented philosophically. It showed a man rejecting civilization's moral framework. It suggested that extreme circumstances required extreme responses. It implied that society's rules might not apply in the wilderness. These ideas made studio executives nervous during the 1970s, when counterculture movements were challenging mainstream American values. Releasing this scene felt dangerous, subversive, political. By the time those fears became irrelevant, the studio had invested so much in the cover-up that reversing course felt impossible. Jeremiah Johnson went on to become a classic film. Critics praised it. Audiences loved it. Robert Redford's career soared even higher. But the deleted scene became Hollywood legend. Film students whispered about it. Cinephiles searched for bootleg copies. Online forums erupted with theories about what had been removed and why. Sidney Pollack never fully explained the scene's removal during his lifetime. He gave interviews about the film. He discussed his creative vision. But whenever the missing footage came up, he deflected. He moved on. Some believe he made a peace with the studio's decision. Others think he was legally prevented from discussing it. Pollack died in 2008, taking whatever detailed knowledge he had directly to his grave. Robert Redford, when asked about it in rare interviews, gave vague responses. He acknowledged that scenes were cut. He said it was a normal part of filmmaking. He never confirmed what the scene contained or whether he thought it should have remained in the final film. His silence suggested either agreement with the studio's decision or an unwillingness to revisit old Hollywood battles. The studio that made Jeremiah Johnson has since changed ownership multiple times. Current executives have little institutional memory of the original controversy. When film historians or restoration teams have requested access to the original negative to study the splice marks and potentially reconstruct the scene, they've been denied. The negative remains locked away, classified almost, treated like a state secret rather than a piece of cinema history. What's remarkable is how completely the scene has disappeared from cultural memory. Most modern viewers don't know it ever existed. Film databases make no mention of it. Restoration documentaries ignore it. The official narrative is that Jeremiah Johnson is exactly as Pollack intended. Complete, finished, perfect. Yet evidence of its removal sits in plain sight in the original negative. A physical ghost. A documented absence. The question that remains unanswered after 50 years is simple. Why? Why protect a scene this carefully? Why maintain the silence so rigidly? What was the studio truly afraid of? And should audiences finally be allowed to decide for themselves what to think about footage that was removed without their knowledge?